Okay, if you're a fan of KISS, I really think you're going to like what I found today. Now, what we do a lot on this channel is we go back and we find old newspaper articles, record reviews, concert reviews, and that kind of thing. And I found one about KISS today that's from the San Francisco Examiner on August 16th, 1977. Now, what makes this one so interesting to me, the article itself, when I read this to you, you're just going to like it if you're a KISS fan because it just has a lot of cool things in it. But what got me about this that I thought was so fascinating, now I'm going to show you right now, take a look at this front page on the San Francisco Examiner, August 16th, 1977. Now, what happened on that day, August 16th, 1977? You can see it right there on the screen. Elvis Presley dies. Now, why this was so interesting to me is the juxtaposition. Because on the cover of this newspaper, you have the announcement of the death of Elvis Presley, and then you see up in the upper right-hand corner, KISS. And if you scroll down on this newspaper, I'm going to go down a little bit, it was interesting to see these two things on the same newspaper. Down here at the bottom, the invasion of KISS. So the juxtaposition of these two things I thought was so fascinating because we have Elvis, who used to be the biggest band, or not the biggest band, the biggest performer, the most significant pop icon, singer, musician, performer in the world, dies. And right now on the same newspaper, it's right when KISS is becoming the biggest thing in the world. It's almost like the old guard moving out right as the new guard is moving in. And matter of fact, this article even goes into that, the fact that at this moment in time, KISS is the biggest thing that there is. So anyway, it was the thing that got me, that made me really want to dive into this article, was just that juxtaposition on this newspaper, this day, Elvis dies, and KISS at that moment is becoming the biggest thing. And they have, interestingly, not really super parallel paths, but they do have these similarities. Because Elvis at one point, he was the rock and roll guy back in the 50s. And what? All the parents hated him. Everybody was scared of him. They wouldn't show him on TV or it wouldn't show him below the waist on TV because it was just too much. The kids can't handle this kind of thing, and it's vulgar. And then what happened to him? He kind of went Hollywood, and he started being in all these movies, and he changed. And after a while, he kind of lost his position, and people in a way kind of lost track or interest in him as a rock singer because he just he went too far in that direction of being this Hollywood icon, and it just wasn't the same. And then in 1968, what happened? He came back. He had that comeback concert, which I've talked about on this channel before. And if you've never seen that thing, you need to watch it. He shows up in that black leather playing the guitar, and he's got those four guys on that stage with him. The comeback special has a few other things in it, but when you watch it, you're like, okay, now we all remember why we loved this guy. And similarly, KISS started out as this raw energy, this rock and roll band that just had this new thing that was going on, and everybody was paying attention to them, and they became the biggest thing in the world. And then what happened? They started turning into kind of caricatures of themselves. And then they were almost like Elvis in the wilderness for a while. And then they had to come back. And then for them, you could argue that it was either the Lick It Up, or it could have been just the comeback shows in 1996 when they put the makeup back on, and then they were back. And then similarly to Elvis, it was, okay, we remember why we loved these guys. And then they came back, and similar, again, Elvis today is still a legend. And KISS, same thing. Those characters, that thing, everybody knows who they are. Some of the most recognizable faces in the world, kind of like Elvis. Now, I think Elvis, anybody that's watched this channel again for any period of time knows that he's just like the pinnacle of just greatness, everything about him. But it is an interesting parallel. And one other one that they mention here, I think in this article a little bit, is they both had these kind of maybe even a little bit selfish managers. that kind of guided them. And because you had, with KISS, you had Bill Aucoin, and he was the one that kind of guided their career and in so many ways helped them become massive, and then in some ways oversaw the downfall too, because they just went too far. And similarly with Elvis, you had Colonel Tom Parker, who was kind of a self-serving, and I don't want to go too many parallels with those two, because Tom Parker was kind of a bad guy. And I don't know that Bill Aucoin really was, but there was a lot of self-serving that was going on in both of those things. And they both helped these people, their artists, get to the point that they did, where they had these specific people that just had this vision for who they should be and who they could be, and then kind of help them fulfill it, and then themselves became extremely wealthy and successful in the process. So anyway, it was just, again, this is what brought my attention to it, was this juxtaposition. We have this same newspaper where we see the king of rock and roll, who at one point was the biggest thing in the world, and he dies. And at that same moment, KISS is rising to become the next biggest thing in the world. Anyway, I'm going to read this, and I think you'll get a kick out of it. And just to put this in context, because this is being written on August 16, 1977, this is the album that's out at the time, Love Gun, and this was put out on June 30th of 1977, so just a few months before this album came out. And I got to tell you, this picture between this one and Destroyer, I mean, two of the coolest pictures, first of all, of these guys, just the most iconic images, and then you throw Rock and Roll Over in between, and which is one of the coolest album covers ever created. But anyway, it's just interesting, these just unbelievable album covers, and this is just one of the greats. Okay, so now listen to this, and listen to how this article kind of starts out, and how this person, how their perception of KISS, what their perception is, and then the recognition that this is the biggest thing in the world. This is so fascinating. Okay, so now the headline, another way, invasion of KISS, the Flash Peddlers. It's predictable. High-heeled, kabuki-faced, fire-eating, flash-peddling KISS will menace the mostly teenage crowd at its sold-out Cow Palace rock show tonight with firepots, smoke bombs, and magical feats of levitation. They may also play some music, depending on how you define the term. Now, a couple of these lines, you could have imagined people writing about Elvis back in the 50s, because that's the way they saw him. This isn't music. All the kids are getting, I mean, it's just a fascinating parallel. They may also play some music, depending on how you define the term. KISS is the kiddies' favorite. The pube tubes, the suburbanites delight. The rock critics don't like KISS. KISS doesn't care. KISS sells tens of millions of records that shake the floor when you turn the volume up and the treble down. In all the history of the world, there's never been anything quite like KISS. Their fans described as the KISS Army know this. The money rolls in. KISS is even a comic book, a Marvel comic book, which is the Manchester Guardian of hip superhero comic books. In 4 meteoric years, KISS has risen from the sleazy backstreets of New York rock to the pinnacle of heavy metal adolescence. Now, this is the part that demonstrates, because we forget just how big KISS was. And this is the part that demonstrates it. A Gallup poll of teenagers ranked KISS as the most popular musical group in the United States with boys and girls. More popular than the Eagles, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Boston, Chicago, Aerosmith, Peter Frampton, Earth, Wind and Fire, Casey and the Sunshine Band, Barry Manilow, Elton John, the Beach Boys, Stevie Wonder, and Barbra Streisand, in that order. So, those are all iconic. All of them iconic. All of them were some of the biggest things ever, and KISS was more popular than all of them at this moment. Why? Quote, "They're a unique group," said one fan. They do what they feel on the stage and show you a good time. They paint their bodies and shoot off rockets and things like that. KISS is the most outrageous, most fiendish, most satisfying rock group in the world. Now, again, when I do this juxtaposition between these two, that the day Elvis dies, out with the old and in with KISS, now the biggest thing in the world, you can imagine these things. At one point, Elvis was the biggest thing. And then they would have called him, though, in those early days when he was so big, the most outrageous, fiendish, same kind of thing. Their latest album is called Love Gun, which is the one that I got out here. Then it continues on to another page where the headline is The Kabuki-Faced KISS in a Class by Themselves. And then you can see there's a picture of the guys, and then let's see what this is. It says, they lined up early today at the Cow Palace. Crowds want to buy tickets to see KISS, and you see a bunch of people there lined up to get tickets. Okay, continuing the article. And comes complete with a cardboard pistol and the words KISS written on the record jacket in what appears to be blood. So yeah, this thing had a little cardboard gun in it, and then what they're talking about here, if you haven't seen it before, the inner sleeve actually has this KISS written what appears to be blood. Okay. The album cover depicts the four members of KISS. I'm going to look at that again here. The album cover depicts the four members of KISS: guitarist Paul Stanley, drummer Peter Criss, lead guitarist Space Ace Frehley, and you'll notice here that they have a pretty significant typo by leaving the name of Gene Simmons completely out as they describe him. And blank has a 7-inch tongue towering demonically over an array of kinkily attired maidens. KISS has performed at concert halls, sports arenas, theaters, rock palaces, and high schools. Wherever they go, they like to go in full regalia, chains, platform boots, white face makeup, and barbaric-looking Conan the Conqueror-type outfits. No photograph of KISS without makeup has ever appeared anywhere in public. KISS is always in role. Still, KISS is indefinable. KISS fills the rock void left by the withdrawing of Alice Cooper without aping the king-queen of gothic rock's garish theatricality. No guillotines, passion plays, or grotesque cruelties of KISS. What a new breed of punk rockers seeks to practice, rebellion, anarchy, nihilism, KISS merchandises with the help of their manager, Bill Aucoin, and Neil Bogart's Casablanca record label. Aucoin is a former television producer of an LP of great moments from TV star Johnny Carson's Tonight Show that might have bankrupted the company if Bogart hadn't also released Donna Summer's Love to Love Ya Baby that featured her in moaning ecstasy and rose to #1 on the charts. Punk rockers, who are many in Britain but fewer in the United States, have so far flunked out commercially, though many groups seem to be developing followings, and the cultural aspects that accompany the new music are beginning to catch the attention of the media. KISS, on the other hand, is boosted along by a dozen complaints from booking and advertising agencies. And whereas punk rock fans tend to drink too much, hook safety pins through their cheeks, and get sick on each other. By the way, do you remember that? Do you remember that period of time? At least it happened in my school. I think it had to be sometime in the early 80s when, of course, everybody was getting their ears pierced, but then there was this whole thing about sticking a safety pin in your cheek. Did you have that? Did you ever remember people doing that? I don't know what it was about that, but that just showed up one day and everybody started putting safety pins. Anyway, just such a strange thing to see that again here written. And get sick on each other. KISS-adoring multitudes seem to feel that the KISS act best expresses their social frustrations. That is an attitude KISS encourages. While punk rockers drop back from the middle-class herd, KISS, perhaps unintentionally, gives it lessons in the profit motive. The new KISS album, Love Gun, for example, shipped platinum. And that, again, is such a significant sign of just how big they were. They printed 1 million copies of this thing right off the bat because they knew they'd sell all of them. And just that's just how big they were at the time. It's amazing. That means that record stores had ordered 1 million copies of it before a single disc had left the warehouse. KISS has had 3 hit 45 RPM singles in the last few months: Beth, Hard Luck Woman, and Calling Dr. Love. And of course, Beth was on the album Destroyer, which was 2 albums before this one. Hard Luck Woman and Calling Dr. Love were both off of Rock and Roll Over, which was right before this one. Membership in the KISS Army costs $5. Black youths are significantly absent from the KISS Army. The New York Times reported KISS receives 10% of the retail price of every LP sold. $20,000 for smaller concerts, $40,000 in big cities, and untold riches from the sale of KISS belt buckles, KISS posters, KISS t-shirts, KISS photographs, etc. And curious, how many of you had a KISS belt buckle? I did. And KISS, of course, I had KISS posters and KISS t-shirts, but the belt buckle is one of the things. And by the way, I'd be curious, what other little things did you have related to KISS? Because I also had the KISS lunchbox. And I know I had a ton of other things, but I definitely remember the belt buckle and lunchbox. The 16,000 tickets for tonight's show moved briskly at, get this, $6.50 each. KISS's songs bear provocative titles: Got Love for Sale, Almost Human, Shock Me, etc. KISS's lyrics bear the imprint of 20 years of rock and roll history. Hooligan has this refrain: I've got a 35 Chevy on a 55 frame, can't even spell my name, I'm a hooligan. The Love Gun album contains Then She Kissed Me, an oldie authored by rock and roll tycoon Phil Spector, who produced and recorded, among others, Bob B. Sox and the Blue Jeans back in rock's formative days. Yeah, Phil Spector was a huge deal in the Wall of Sound way back when. I mean, he worked with the Beatles. He was the one that did You Never Close Your Eyes Anymore, the Righteous Brothers. He was a big deal. By the way, that makes me think, what did you think of the fact that they put that song on here? That they put Then She Kissed Me on this album? Because I know people have talked to you about this album, and I think I kind of share this. It is kind of a novelty thing to throw on there, but it's a little distracting. And I know a lot of people that I've talked to about this, like, why were they putting that on there? Seems such a strange thing, anyway, to put on that album. Anyway, I'd love to get your feedback on that. KISS's Love Gun LP was co-produced by Eddie Kramer, who has worked in the past with the late Jimi Hendrix and the currently hot Led Zeppelin group. The members of KISS are from Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Queens. Simmons, who is the oldest at 32, and the group's founder, once taught school in Manhattan. But, he has said, I couldn't stand the kids. And that is the end of the article. Anyway, as I said a minute ago, what drew me to this article was this interesting juxtaposition where we have this front page of this big newspaper that's announcing in massive letters, Elvis Presley dies, and almost as if it's sneaking in the bottom. I love even just the headline itself. What does it say? Invasion of KISS. Elvis dies, and then down at the bottom, the invasion of KISS. I know it's not that big a deal, but for me, when I found this thing, because this is what I do so often, is search for these things, I loved that juxtaposition. And I loved seeing those two things, the Elvis Presley dying and then the invasion of KISS. And by the way, do you remember Elvis Presley dying? That was such a big deal. And I remember it simply because my mom was a huge Elvis Presley fan. I mean, I remember from my earliest memories were just her and her Elvis records, because we had a whole bunch of them when I was a kid. And what's so funny, and I know she watches this show, I don't know if she'll remember this happening, but I remember coming home from school that day, and what would I have been? I was 7 years old, something like that, 8 years old when this happened. I remember coming home from school, walking up to the house, and she had pinned or nailed or something one of Elvis Presley's records to the front door. And I remember walking up to the door, coming home from school, because we used to walk to school in those days. And I walked up to the door, and there's the front door of the house with with Elvis Presley, a picture, an album cover of his nailed to the front door. And just as a little kid, I'm like, what the heck is going on? You know, and then of course you walk in, my mom is struggling just a little bit because Elvis has left the building, so to speak. So anyway, this has a little more meaning to me in that sense too, just because, and it was not long after that, it was probably right around then that I discovered the album Rock and Roll Over. And I had Paul Stanley actually sign that copy that I had and I gave it to my son. And so he was the one that took it to Paul Stanley, so Paul signed it for him. So that album that I got at that moment, when this all happened, Rock and Roll Over, still exists, and it has Paul Stanley's signature on it. But it was right around that time that I discovered KISS, and that was my first record. Might have been the first record really of any rock group or anything that I owned, was that album Rock and Roll Over. Anyway, love to get your feedback on all this stuff, remembering Elvis's death, KISS, the comparisons here between the two, and what this was all like for you discovering them. And did you discover them kind of like I did when they were at their biggest, when they were, again, the biggest thing in the United States at least, and they were more popular for, as it said there in the thing, for the boys and girls than everybody else at that moment. Anyway, hey, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and as always, we love getting all the great comment and input that you have on these things, and so please leave your comments down below. And also, if you're a fan of KISS, I know that no KISS fan is an island. You know other people that love KISS. Hit the share button, take this video and share it with other people that are interested in KISS. And there you go. Anyway, with that, have yourself a fantastic day.